We've done it, guys. We've made it to 2010. For the past several weeks now, we've covered how the Cars diecast line started and began expanding, giving us main characters, and then more side characters and character variants, more and more background characters, introducing deluxes, chases. In 2009, we saw the introduction of a non-mainline series with the Storytellers line. We saw the introduction of lenticulars, seeing the toy line begin to expand past just the Cars movie and experiment with different types of items. And now, in 2010, we have easily one of the biggest and most unique years in the history of the Cars diecast line. 2010 does some stuff that we've never seen happen again in the Cars diecast line. You see, it's been pretty normal so far. We've had a main line, and then here we had a main line and a side series with storytellers. And that's how it's going to tend to be for most of the rest of the years. Of course, I'm sure most of us are familiar with how the Cars diecast line runs nowadays, where we have a main line, and then we have some additional store-exclusive lines. That's gonna be what, the Cars diecast line eventually folds into, that very standard pattern. But 2010 did some wild and wacky stuff. And honestly, it's kind of hard to compare it to previous years. You see, this year's main line actually isn't pictured on my little board here. This year's main line was all lenticulars. Yeah, the main line was just lenticulars. After being introduced in 2009, they went full force on lenticulars, making an absolute ton of them, changing them. In 2009, they had open and closed eyes. In 2010, they now had the ability to have two different facial expressions to varying degrees of success. So yeah, lenticulars overtook the main line, and a lot of collectors at the time were very upset and very scared for the future of the toy line. But there were two other significant lines in 2010. If you wanted new fixed eye cars from the first movie, we had the Final Lap collection, a line that released an absolute ton of Cars characters from the first movie, easily the most obscure we'd ever gotten, and some of them are still some of the most obscure Cars 1 characters of all time. Of course, called Final Lap because this was the final year of Cars 1 diecasts before Cars 2 came out in 2011. Final Lap cars are pretty desirable, many of them being some of the rarest cars of all time, with Race Damage Mood Springs being easily the rarest single in Cars diecast history. That was a Final Lap collection item. Final Lap collection was, funnily enough, a store exclusive. Yeah, imagine having a store exclusive line being how you got new movie releases. That's kind of crazy considering nowadays all of the non-movie items are the store exclusives. And finally, the third lineup for 2010 were the Cars Toons. The Cars Toons Mater's Tall Tales had been airing since 2008, and in 2010 they finally entered the diecast line with a pretty expansive selection of items from the Cars Toons. The Cars Toons line is very, very, very well loved, although it did make some strange choices. For example, there are a lot of very notable characters and character variants from the Cars Toons missing. To this day, we still don't have a Matador McQueen. In 2010, we didn't receive Tokyo Mater, and a lot of the main Mater and McQueen variants were unfortunately locked away behind multi-packs, which is really a shame. But yeah, 2010 was a weird and wacky year and kind of throws off the pretty linear timeline we've had so far. After some pretty basic years, they did some pretty strange and experimental stuff in 2010, gearing up for, the last year that we would have just Cars 1 releases before another movie came out. Oh, color changers also started in 2010. So yeah, a lot of weird and different, unique stuff. Anyway, guys, welcome back to 20 Years of Favorites. This is a series where I review my favorite item from each year of the Cars diecast line in my collection. Today, we're going to be taking a look at my favorite item from 2010, which may surprise you. It's Paint Mask McQueen. Yeah, all the things I just talked about, and I landed on a lenticular. I know, I'm as surprised as many of you probably are. I really wanted to include a Cars Toons item, but I'm going to be real with you guys. I own a lot of the Cars Toons cars, but my all-time favorite Cars Toons items are some of the ones that I don't have. The music video maker, one of my favorite diecasts ever, and unfortunately it's very rare, and I don't have it. I don't have many Final Lap collection cars. You know, every time I thought, okay, what 2010 item do I want to do? I thought of some Cars Tunes ones I have, I thought of some Final Lap ones I have, but the item that I kept coming back to was Paint Mask McQueen. Despite the lenticulars having a pretty bad reputation, and most of them being, yeah, pretty bad, I genuinely believe this is one of the most underrated Cars diecasts of all time, and I genuinely think it's one of the only lenticulars that uses the lenticular concept perfectly. So let's take a closer look at this item. This is Paint Mask McQueen. He was a lenticular chase in 2010, and one of many lenticulars from that year that never got a regular fixed eye release. This is one of the most obscure McQueens from the first movie. Like a lot of 2010 items, super obscure, very little screen time in Cars, and it's based on when Ramon is about to paint over McQueen and turn him into Cruisin' McQueen. So the paint mask refers to this on McQueen's wheels and windows to make sure that he doesn't get, to make sure that he doesn't get those different parts of him all covered in the new red paint. What I think makes this item so great, in addition to just how good the paint mask itself looks, it really looks like there's some paper on McQueen. Like, look at that. That's genuinely fantastic sculpting there, and I love the inclusion of the tape. This guy has two facial expressions that fit absolutely perfectly. Sorry if my voice is a bit off or if I'm kind of wheezing. I'm sick currently, if you couldn't already tell. Sorry. Yeah, he has two facial expressions that fit absolutely perfectly with both the scene in the movie and the lenticular concept. We have one expression here where McQueen's sort of looking off to the side, and one where he's making, can we get it to go? This face instead. So it kind of looks like he's inhaling and exhaling. See? The mouth works perfectly with both of those expressions. Inhale, exhale. See? Inhale, exhale. Now, I've always said inhale and exhale, but if you actually check the movie, McQueen kind of looks off to the side, and then this is the face he makes before holding his breath. So, yeah, I mean, whether you want to see it as him inhaling and exhaling, or him looking off to Ramon, a little confused or surprised, and then getting ready to hold his breath, it just works so perfectly. These are two expressions pulled straight from the scene. They both work with the mouth. They work in two ways, right? It looks like inhaling or exhaling, or it looks like exactly what McQueen is doing in the scene, looking off and then preparing to hold his breath. Of course, you do have the typical lenticular syndrome of, it looks like he's got four eyes. This is going to be a nightmare thumbnail to take. Look at that. I don't know how I'm going to do that thumbnail, guys. But yeah, genuinely such a good use of the lenticular eye concept. If we were to ever get this as a fixed eye item, I would hope to get this face instead, the sort of exhaling or breathing in face. So yeah, we've got all your typical McQueen details. Not much to say here, just all the stuff you'd see on the side. Despite being pretty sick right now, I will still read all of McQueen's secondary sponsors. The Piston Cup, Nitro Weight, Revolting, Mood Springs, Octane Gain, No Stall, Vitaline, Gaskets, Gasprin, Easy Idle, Little Torquey Pistons, RPM, Leak Less, Retread, and Clutch Aid. The grind never stops, guys, even though it probably should right now. Well, yeah, I love what they do with the wheels of the paint mask, and the paint mask looks really good here as well. I also love that McQueen's window bars are not present. Really good attention to detail there. One of the weirdest things that's always confused people about this item is, why is one of his wheels not covered? I don't know. Nobody knows. We don't see this side of McQueen in the scene in the movie, so it looks like they just took some creative liberty and we're like, oh, well, what if one part of McQueen's not covered yet? That's stupid. Why? It's called Paint Mask McQueen, not 3/4 Paint Mask McQueen. Which wheel is this? Is this Backy Jr.? Somebody cover up Backy Jr. Poor guy's naked right now. But yeah, I just love the detailing here. It really does look like paper there. And look at that, they even included the Kingston, Barcelona, and San Bernardino bumper stickers on McQueen, something Cruisin' McQueen didn't have until 10 years after this item. McQueen's like, whoa, what was that? Whoa. Sorry, wow. Sickness can't stop me from doing a bad Owen Wilson impression. Unfortunately, all of the wheels do seem to have the same pattern, which is a shame. And this is also a pretty rare case of a McQueen diecast where the wheels are all connected. You know, typically with a McQueen, your wheels are gonna sort of roll independently of each other. It's not the case here. Here, they are kind of bigger and thicker and all connected to each other. But yeah, there's a look at the base if you want to read anything. This is Paint Mask McQueen. I genuinely think that for a year so dominated by lenticulars, with so many of them being genuinely so bad or so uninteresting, this is really a diamond in the rough. I really think that this is one of the most underrated McQueen variants out there. I think it looks fantastic. Both of the faces look good. The lenticular functionality actually looks pretty good and works and makes sense for the item. This has been a personal favorite of mine for a very, very long time. So despite 2010 being a very strange year in terms of what it gave us, it was a pretty stellar year where a lot of the new items were really, really great. And again, I'm pretty shocked this is what I landed on for my favorite, but I do think this is a really fun one. Anyway, guys, thank you all so much for watching. Let me know what your favorite item from 2010 is. It's almost definitely not this, but this is mine. And I'll see you guys next week for 2011. We're going to be moving to Cars 2. Bye now.